Hello and welcome. You're listening to CIH Futures Guide to the Housing Sector. Futures is the Chartered Institute of Housing's network for young professionals in the housing sector. In this podcast series, we introduce and explore key topics and issues facing the sector today and how you can get involved. To find out more about Futures and what the CIH can do for you, you can visit cih.org.
Hello and welcome to the CIH Futures podcast. I'm Emily Stockford. I'm a member of the CIH Futures board, and in my day job, I am Sustainability Strategy Manager at Stonewater. In this episode, we're kicking off our Day in the Life podcast series by exploring what a working day looks like for a housing officer with our guests Sophie Morrison and Lumi Westerlund. Welcome to you both and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
First off, Sophie, could you introduce yourself and tell us a bit about your role?
Yeah, of course. So thank you for having me. My name is Sophie Morrison. I am a housing officer for our Glasgow-based housing association. We have around 3,100 homes, a mixture of tenure there, ownership and social. I don't manage all of them. We have about 12 housing officers and I am responsible for a patch of around 200 to 240, I think, if my memory serves me correct. The day-to-day role is different every day. It's, I suppose, the kind of stuff that we're doing with the tenants is the same, but the approach and things that we have is different because every tenant is different and every tenant's needs are different. What usually get up to in a day-to-day is I don't have a specific day-to-day kind of thing that I can talk you through, to be honest, because every day is different, as I've said. We obviously do the things from like your tenancy management and managing rent accounts, which is obviously crucial for an association, dealing with breaches of tenancy. However, what we're finding more and more is that we're supporting very vulnerable tenants. I find that's becoming an increasing part of the job, where previously maybe social work would have been supporting them, but that's becoming our role in a way because of various factors. I suppose the staffing and the third party agencies as well, potential cuts to their services is becoming a barrier to get that support in place for our tenants. And one major part of our role is to ensure tenancy sustainment, and a lot of the time we need these services in place to ensure that. So thankfully we do have tenancy sustainment officers in my association who are a godsend that assist in that. So not only is it trying to get referrals to these services, but a lot of the times you find that you're the person that the tenant trusts. And that's why I also feel like we sometimes take these roles on as rather than signposting people and them having to explain again and again. They trust their housing officer. So yeah, I find that my day-to-day varies vastly because of that aspect.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, in short, there is no day-to-day life of a housing officer.
Pretty much, yeah.
It varies so much, but it's that face, isn't it, of a housing association? You are the person that the tenant knows and comes to for so many different day-to-day issues. Yeah, fab. Lumi, is this similar to you? So do you want to introduce yourself and tell us what your role is and a bit about what you get up to?
Yeah, sure. My name is Lumi Westerlund, and I am a senior housing officer at Notting Hill Genesis Housing Association, which is based in London. And it's a bit bigger than Sophie's. We manage about 66,000 homes across the city. Obviously, it's a mix of, general needs, residents, shared ownership, leaseholders, and things like that. My role as senior housing officer is a tiny bit different than the housing officer role in that I manage a team of several kind of experienced housing officers, and we have a specific focus on more of the complex cases that come to housing officers. So a big part of our role is providing support on those cases that Sophie was actually speaking about. So safeguarding and things like that, and referrals to local authority. We do a lot of work kind of day to day. It might look like sitting down with, in a multi-agency meeting, like Sophie was talking about, with the local authority, with the different professionals, with the police who can provide support. Because cases like that, especially when you have a vulnerable resident, they can become so large. And for most housing officers who are looking after 200, 240 homes, you don't have, say you suddenly have 5 residents who are vulnerable, which you probably have more. You don't have that much time to focus on each one, and they, that they need that time. So my team actually exists as almost like this support mechanism to come in, either to take the case over from the housing officer if the housing officer really doesn't have time, but in a lot of cases we actually work with the housing officer, especially because, like Sophie was saying, they have that relationship of trust and the resident knows them. So we might sit with them. The housing officer might remain like the communication with the resident, but we might do some of the heavier lifting in the background just so they have like more time to do all the million of other things that can come up in a property, like the repairs and things like that. So yeah, my day-to-day also changes quite frequently because housing is so unpredictable, but it's much more focused on kind of the complex cases and providing that support so housing officers can do their job as well as they can.
Yeah, thank you. So if the housing officer is the front line, I suppose maybe the senior housing officer is the second line, just there behind.
We're like their front line. We're holding their hand, so that they can be their best selves, I think.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you. Sticking with you, Lumi, how did you get started in this role? Was there kind of a strict career path to follow, or were there lots of different ways to get into senior housing officer?
Yeah, I think with senior housing officer, I was a housing officer for about 2 years before I became a senior housing officer. So, and that was crucial. I mean, starting off as a housing officer, you learn so much of the smaller things that are actually so important to residents, which I'm sure Sophie can speak to, like the, everything that comes day to day when you're living in a house, just, the leaks that happen, the things like that. So I did spend 2 years building quite a in-depth relationship with the 200 residents I was looking after and getting to know them and creating consistency. And I think what happened in that is that you also collaborate with other departments within your organization, and you get to know who in the department is going to be able to help you to make sure repair is done as quickly as possible, things like that. So I think those 2 years of being a housing officer allowed me to build those relationships that then have kind of allowed me to become a senior housing officer, because now I can provide that support to other people and new people in the organization. They might have questions and I can say, oh yeah, hey, I know that policy and procedure. I've done it a million times. Let me walk you through it. Or, I know exactly who will know what to do here, even if I don't know. So yeah, starting as housing officer is crucial, but I think, and Sophie can probably speak to, I think getting into being a housing officer, you don't necessarily need to have done loads housing specific beforehand. I think it is quite an open career path, which is awesome.
Yeah, would you agree with that, Sophie? What was your route into becoming a housing officer?
Yeah, so I think I agree with it in part. I suppose got into housing quite late. It was only in 2020 that I started to work in housing. Prior to that, my background was like business at uni and teaching at uni, so it was complete career change. But I'm glad of the career change because I love working in housing. I started in a customer contact team within a Glasgow Housing Association, and that was my route into housing. Essentially, it's the call centre for all the calls that tenants make to the association. Customers also that aren't tenants make. First point of contact, essentially. So that was my first route in. That really kind of let me see everything that the associations deal with. From there, I went to another housing association where I was working in the business strategy team. So that was an area of housing which, on the face of it, I didn't know existed. So that was really good to get that insight into more of the policy aspect of a housing association. That was just a short role, and then I managed to get a trainee housing officer role, which gave you the practical, but also the theory. You don't really need theory aspects to become a housing officer. A lot of it is practical on the job, I would say. You learn every day, but it's part of the trainee housing officer role. I was fortunate enough to do the postgraduate diploma in housing studies, and that just really enhanced my knowledge of the sector as a whole, which I suppose allows me to do my job better, I think. So yeah, there's not really a strict career path to follow. There are various routes in. There are a lot more apprenticeships now in housing. I know in my housing association, we have a couple of apprentices and a couple of trainees in various departments, from customer services to property to housing itself. So yeah, there are various routes into the housing industry, which is good, and it opens a lot more doors for the younger generation, I think.
Yeah, it's fantastic, isn't it? And I think that what you've both shown is that there isn't one strict way that you have to come into housing, and B, there's not a specific qualification or A levels or degree or something that you have to have. I think it's passion, and then it's learning on the job, and whether that's starting in the contact center and learning that way, or starting in a housing officer or trainee housing officer role and learning in that way. Learning on the job is the best way to do it. Come on, Lumi, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I did, because I think kind of what Sophie pointed out is that so many people come from so many different careers before housing often as well. And I think the best bit I've found about housing is that pretty much everyone you're working with really wants to be there, and they really love housing, and they really care about it, even if it wasn't what they did before. And I think that is the enthusiasm that is going to make you a good housing officer, is wanting to be there and enjoying that kind of resident relationship and helping residents. And I think also the different people who come into housing, everyone brings something different. Sometimes there's a teacher who comes in and they have a lot of experience working with kids and maybe with parents, so they know exactly how to kind of navigate those relationships. So yeah, I think it adds to housing all the different people who are in the job, I think.
Yeah, I just echo that. I suppose we have this thing that I've heard before. It's people fall into housing, but once you've fallen into it, you often don't want to leave it. It is a very rewarding career. So it's one for life, I suppose.
Yeah,
definitely.
I hope so. And so if there's not any kind of specific training maybe that you need to take that first step, would you say that there is more qualifications or just knowledge that you need, Lumi, to be able to kind of progress into maybe a senior housing officer position or something kind of equivalent?
Yeah, I'd say on the job, like Sophie was saying, you very much are learning meeting with residents, because things you'd never think is an issue necessarily, and then you meet the resident and their priorities are very clear, and everyone has different priorities as a resident. So it's really very much a learning on the job role. And I'd say, at least in my experience, my housing association offers so many trainings to housing officers. They're always providing new trainings. I have 5 trainings coming up in the next 2 months, and I've already worked here for 3 years. So it's definitely not something you start and then you're ready to go. I think you're always training, but as you attend these trainings on the job, learning about safeguarding rules and legislation and the new damp and mold legislation, I think because the legislation changes so frequently and the regulations come in that we have to abide by, there is constantly new procedures that you have to follow. So I wouldn't say there's obviously there are courses like the CIH course and things like that are really valuable, but you're always learning in this job. I wouldn't say there's a start or end ever.
Yeah, do you see that as well, Sophie? Are you motivated by that kind of constant learning and developing?
Yeah, most definitely. I think there's always room to learn and on the job. And every day is different, as we've said before. So you are learning for your own personal development all the time. But yeah, I think no matter the department that you work in within a housing association, there's always room for that educational aspect of it, and qualifications that you can gain. A lot of the times housing associations will put you through qualifications, which is another aspect to it that is beneficial for your own career development.
So what would you say, Sophie, to somebody who might be listening to this podcast and considering moving into a position like a housing officer, whether they've not worked in housing before, or maybe like you did, have worked in the contact centre or something similar?
I would say do it. I would say take the jump. It is very, very rewarding. No 2 days are the same. It will be hard at times, but that comes with every job that you will do. But yeah, it's a very, very rewarding career. The career development that you will have will be great for your future as well if you decided that you wanted to progress. Yeah, you will become a very important person in your tenant's life, so be prepared for that. But yeah, it's a fantastic role, and it's every association, I will say, is different. I worked for a smaller association, and my role there is dramatically different, I would say, from my role just now. Now working in a larger association. But yeah, do it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. That's so motivating. Lumi, sort of similar question. What would you say to anyone who is a housing officer that's looking at like what their next step might be?
Yeah, I would say maybe, because housing officers so often, it depends on the housing association, but you can kind of be a jack of all trades. You're doing such a broad range of tasks for these residents. So I'd say think about what element of the job you like the most. For me, I've always really, we do visits to all of our residents where we sit down, and I find those to be some of the most rewarding because you'll meet with people who, maybe haven't had a visit recently, and if you just sit with them for an hour, by the end, they're just so pleased that you came, and that was one of my favorite bits. So I think there are so many different routes you can go from housing officer as well within housing. Like there's the resident engagement roles, there's the repairs roles and things like that. So housing officer is actually such a great starting point because you're kind of doing a little bit of everything. And then if you really like doing a little bit of everything, which I kind of do, which is why I've kind of stayed so far in the housing officer kind of track. If you like doing a specific thing, there are so many opportunities to focus in, and so really have a think, familiarize yourself with all the different areas, and then see where you want to go from there, because honestly, the opportunities are pretty endless in housing, I think.
Thank you. And yeah, CIH can be here to help you with that as well. There's some fantastic support on the CIH website around all sorts of different roles in housing. So I'd encourage anyone to go and have a look there as well for some inspiration.
Yeah.
Thank you both. So I've got some quick fire questions for you just to end this episode. So I'll do each question and get you both to answer as we go through. So get ready.
Okay.
Do you prefer customer facing or office work, Lumi?
Customer facing.
Sophie?
Customer facing.
Good, you're both in the right jobs.
Yeah.
Are you an early bird or a night owl, Sophie?
I wish I could say it was an early bird, but I'm afraid I'm a night owl.
What about you, Lumi?
Yeah, I'm the same, definitely. Most productive at night, unfortunately.
Do you prefer tea or coffee, Lumi?
I don't know. That's a hard one. I don't love either very much. I guess I would pick tea if I had to get. Can I say hot chocolate?
Oh, okay, yeah, go on. I'll give it to you.
Thanks.
Sophie?
Coffee. No question.
Nice. And finally, where would you rather be in 5 or 10 years' time? Would you like to be in a similar role, or do you see yourself moving up and on to being the chief exec, Lumi?
Wow, chief exec, that feels ambitious, but Yeah, I do want to stay in housing, and I want to progress as much as possible. I'm still open-minded to what that specialism looks like. I love things like placemaking and resident experience of their estates and things like that. So we'll have to see, but yeah, definitely still in housing.
Great. Watch this space. What about you, Sophie?
Yeah, I would be similar answer to Lumi. Chief exec is very ambitious, particularly within 10 years. However, is it the end goal? I don't know. Yeah, I am open-minded also to see how my career develops in housing. And yeah, I don't know. I would like to think I would be progressing upwards, but to which role, I don't know.
Yeah, okay. Lots and lots to see and yeah, do before then.
We'll have to do another podcast.
In 10 years' time, we'll come back.
We'll come back and revisit.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you to Lumi and Sophie for giving us some insight into your roles. If you're listening and this career route has piqued your interest and you want to know more, you can find out more about a variety of different roles in housing on the CIH website, or you can search for all the latest vacancies on the CIH jobs website. Thank you for listening, and we hope you tune into our next Futures podcast on the CIH website or YouTube channel, where we will continue to explore careers in housing. Thanks for listening.